making a massive life decision like relocating to a brand new country for work. It's actually a lot like buying a car online based entirely on those shiny promotional photos.
Oh, absolutely. You see the glossy exterior.
Right, exactly. You look at the sticker price, which in this case would be your new gross salary offer.
Yeah.
And you think, wow, this looks incredible. I mean, I'm going to be living large. But the thing is, you haven't actually looked under the hood yet.
Yeah, because what you don't see are the actual mechanics of the thing. I mean, you're admiring the leather seats, but you really have no idea how the engine is built.
Or how much fuel it's going to burn just to get you down the street on a daily basis.
Exactly. And that is a profoundly common expat shock. People negotiate based on their gross income, just assuming the tax systems are relatively similar to what they know back home.
And then reality hits.
Right. They end up severely miscalculating their actual day-to-day purchasing power, all because they didn't understand the underlying tax mechanisms.
Which is exactly why today we are tearing up the promotional brochures. We're looking directly at the engine.
I love that.
So for this deep dive, our mission is to give you, the listener, the definitive, absolute shortcut guide to the ultimate 2026 expat tax showdown.
The big one.
The big one, yeah. Spain's famous Beckham law versus the Netherlands' 30% ruling. And we're basing all of this on an incredibly comprehensive 2026 tax comparison data set that was recently published by Calquify.
Right, and Calquify just updated all their numbers to reflect some, well, frankly, massive legislative changes from late 2024 and 2025.
Yeah, the landscape has completely shifted. So we're going to figure out which of these two legendary tax regimes will actually put more money in your pocket. And, more importantly, which one actually suits your specific lifestyle.
It's honestly the perfect time to run this comparison. I mean, both Spain and the Netherlands have spent years aggressively courting international talent, but the mechanics of their respective offers have diverged so significantly over the last couple of years.
Yeah, if you are sitting there weighing offers from Amsterdam and Madrid right now, the choice is fundamentally different than it was even 2 years ago.
Oh, completely different.
So let's unpack this from the ground up. Before we get into whether you have kids or whether you own a massive stock portfolio, the logical starting point is the baseline salary math.
The pure income tax face-off.
Exactly. How do the raw income tax rates actually compare right now in 2026? Let's start with Spain, actually, because it seems a little bit easier to digest.
It is, yeah.
From what I understand, the Beckham law is basically just a flat 24% tax rate on all Spanish source income, up to 600,000 euros. And you get that for 5 years, is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. The Spanish system is a very clean, very predictable mechanism. It's basically designed to be simple for the taxpayer to understand and, straightforward for the government to administer.
Makes sense.
You make the money, they take roughly a quarter of it all the way up to that very high cap.
Okay, simple enough. But then we look at the Netherlands, and I have to admit, I'm confused. I keep hearing these rumors from expats in Amsterdam about this supposed 30-20-10 step-down plan.
Ah, yes, the step down.
It sounds terrifying, like your tax benefit just slowly bleeds out over 5 years. But looking at the new Calquify data, it seems like that might just be like a ghost policy. Is that actually happening, or is it just a rumor?
Well, what's fascinating here is how fast the Dutch political winds shifted on this issue.
Okay, so it was real at some point.
It was. That graduated step down where you'd get 30% of your income tax-free for the first 20 months, then 20% for the next 20, then 10% for the final 20. That was the plan.
Ah, okay.
But it was officially repealed. The Dutch Senate basically approved the repeal via the second memorandum amendment to the 2025 tax plan back in December 2024.
Oh, wow. So it never happened.
Exactly. So the step down never actually took practical effect for any employee. It scared a lot of people, obviously, but it is officially gone.
Okay, well, that's a massive relief for anyone moving to the Netherlands. So what are the actual rules for the Dutch regime right now in 2026?
Right. So for the 2026 calendar year, the ruling is a flat 30% exemption.
Just a flat 30%?
Yes. However, starting in January 2027, it automatically drops to a flat 27% for the remaining duration of your 5-year term.
Oh, okay. So a slight drop.
Yeah, and that's assuming you're a new entrant who started after January 2024. If you had the ruling before 2024, you're grandfathered in at the full 30%.
Okay, wait. I'm going to push back on the math here for a second. Let's unpack this. If I'm looking at a spreadsheet, a 30% exemption sounds mathematically bigger than a 24% flat rate. I mean, 30 is just a bigger number than 24. So why does the data say Spain still wins the pure math showdown?
Well, it comes down to the fundamental difference between an exemption and a flat rate.
Okay, walk me through that.
Under the Dutch ruling, 30% of your salary is entirely exempt from tax. Zero tax on that portion.
Sounds great.
It does.
Yeah.
But the remaining 70% of your income is still taxed at the standard Dutch progressive rates in what they call Box 1.
Box 1. Let's define that really quick.
Sure, Box 1 is essentially the Dutch tax category for income from actual employment and home ownership.
Got it.
And those standard progressive rates in Box 1, they go all the way up to 49.5%.
Oh, wow. Almost 50%.
Yeah, so you get a break on the first 30%, but you still have to run the gauntlet of the normal, very high tax brackets for the bulk of your paycheck.
Ah, I see. Okay, so that's the catch.
That is the mechanism, exactly.
Right.
When you blend that 30% tax-free portion with the 70% highly taxed portion, your overall effective tax rate in the Netherlands in 2026 is roughly 35%.
Okay, 35%.
Right, and when the exemption drops to 27% in 2027, your effective rate actually climbs to about 36%. So you have to compare that 35 or 36% effective Dutch rate against Spain's pure flat 24%.
Okay, that makes total sense now. So the Dutch are basically taking a larger slice of a smaller pie, while Spain is just taking a smaller slice of the whole pie.
Precisely.
Let's ground this in a real number for the listener. If you are earning a €100,000 gross salary, how much are you actually saving compared to the standard, non-expat tax rates in each country?
Okay, so under Spain's Beckham law, on a €100,000 salary, you are saving roughly 18,000 euros annually compared to the standard Spanish progressive rates.
18 grand, not bad.
Not bad at all. Now, in the Netherlands, under the 2026 flat 30% rule, you are saving about 14,850 euros.
Okay, so a few thousand less.
Right. And from 2027 onwards, when the exemption drops to 27%, that annual saving drops further to about 13,365 euros.
Wow. Okay, so Spain wins the baseline income tax fight by several thousand euros right out of the gate.
They absolutely do.
But we just established earlier that income tax is only part of the story. Because once we transition from gross salary to actual take-home pay, we discover an even larger, often ignored gap.
Oh, the gap gets huge here.
Yeah, this brings us to what I like to call the hidden shipping and handling fees of moving abroad. You think you've paid for the item with your income tax, but then you get hit with Social Security contributions.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Social Security is really where the divergence between these two countries becomes staggering.
It's the silent killer of budgets.
It is. Pure income tax calculators almost always miss this, and honestly, it is the #1 reason expats feel poorer than they expected when they move.
Okay, let's look at the numbers. Spain's standard employee Social Security rate is around 6.35%, which, that feels pretty manageable.
Very manageable.
But the Netherlands, their employee rate, which I guess includes something called ZVW and AWF, is a whopping 27.65%.
Yeah, that's a huge jump.
That is massive.
Yeah.
So if you were on that €100,000 salary we just talked about,
Yeah.
that creates a €21,300 difference in annual employee deductions. That is over €21,000 less in your pocket every single year, just from Social Security. So I have to ask, are the Dutch just ripping people off here, or do you actually get something for giving up 27% of your paycheck?
Well, this raises a really important question about what Social Security actually covers and, how different societies build their safety nets.
Right.
You do actually get something substantial for it. That Dutch rate includes the ZVW, which is mandatory healthcare coverage.
Okay, so healthcare is baked in.
Exactly. This heavily subsidizes the Dutch healthcare system, meaning your out-of-pocket premiums for private health insurance will be lower, and the standard of care is generally exceptional.
Okay, fair enough. And what about the other acronym, the AWF?
Right. So the AWF is the General Unemployment Fund. It provides a very robust safety net if you lose your job.
Which is pretty important as an expat.
Absolutely. The Netherlands has strong worker protections and high unemployment benefits, which obviously have to be funded somehow. It is a highly structured, collective safety net. You're basically paying for a high-trust, highly supported society.
Okay, I respect the social safety net argument. I really do. But even factoring in the healthcare offset and the peace of mind of unemployment benefits, a €21,300 difference in pure cash, that is a canyon.
Oh, there's no denying it. The pure take-home pay still heavily, heavily favors Spain.
Yeah.
The critical lesson for you as an expat negotiating a move is that you must always evaluate European job offers based on the net take-home pay, not the gross.
Don't just look at the top line.
Exactly. Do not just look at that €100,000 top line. The shipping and handling fees of the Dutch system will fundamentally alter your monthly budget compared to living in Madrid or Barcelona.
All right, so Spain is clearly wearing the crown when it comes to salary deductions. But here's where it gets really interesting. What if you aren't just moving with a salary?
Ah, the wealth factor.
Yes. Let's say you've been working for a decade, you've built up some savings, maybe you have like a crypto or ETF investment portfolio, or you own a rental property back in your home country. I understand the Dutch regime just went through a fundamental tectonic shift regarding pre-existing wealth.
They did. For years, the Dutch 30% ruling included a feature called partial non-resident status. And it was arguably the most powerful part of the entire tax break.
Honestly, it sounds like an invisibility cloak for your global piggy banks. Like you could bring your wealth to the Netherlands and the tax authority just wouldn't even look at it.
That's pretty much how it worked. They treated you as a non-resident for wealth tax purposes, even though you physically lived there.
Wow. But as of January 2025, they fully abolished that status for new applicants. They basically took away the invisibility cloak and replaced it with a metal detector at the border.
That is a great way to put it. The abolition of the partial non-resident status means that global assets, so your foreign savings, your stock investments, your foreign property, they now face full Dutch taxation.
And what does that look like?
They are exposed to what the Dutch call Box 2 and Box 3 taxes.
Okay, let's break those boxes down just so we are crystal clear. What are they actually looking for?
Sure. Box 2 taxes income from a substantial interest, meaning if you own 5% or more of a company, like if you are a startup founder with equity, for example.
Okay, makes sense. And box 3?
Box 3 is the big one for most expats. It taxes your savings and investments. And this is where it gets tricky. The Dutch tax authority calculates an assumed fictitious yield on your global net worth.
Wait, a fictitious yield?
Yeah. They essentially guess what your money should have earned, and they tax you on that assumed growth completely, regardless of whether your portfolio actually made money that year.
Seriously. So even if the market crashes and you lose money, you still pay tax on the assumed growth.
Exactly.
That's brutal. Just to be thorough on the Calcify data here, 2026 is the final transitional year for people who already held the 30% ruling before 2023, right?
Yes, that's correct. After 2026, everyone is fully exposed to this wealth tax.
Wow. And meanwhile, look at Spain. Under the Beckham law, Spain still entirely exempts foreign source investment income and foreign assets from the Spanish wealth tax, right?
Yep. If your assets are outside of Spain, they are completely shielded during your 5-year term.
So what does this actually look like in practice? Like, imagine a 32-year-old who has built up a $200,000 ETF portfolio back in the U.S. Should they just completely cross Amsterdam off their list?
Well, Box 3 taxation is really the silent killer of the Dutch ruling for high net worth individuals. If you are a young professional moving with just a suitcase and a laptop, this doesn't affect you immediately because you haven't built the wealth yet.
Right, you're starting from scratch.
But if you have that $200,000 portfolio, the Dutch wealth tax on those assets can easily wipe out a significant portion of the income tax savings you are getting from the 30% ruling.
So it basically cancels out the benefit.
It can, yeah. It makes Spain drastically more attractive for anyone who is asset rich. It is a massive structural advantage for Spain that you simply will not see on a basic salary tax calculator.
Okay, so we have laid out some heavy financial math here. We've got Box 1 progressive rates, the shipping and handling deductions, and the Box 3 wealth traps.
A lot of numbers.
Yeah, quite a few. So now let's map these raw numbers to your actual lifestyle. Because obviously none of this happens in a vacuum. You aren't just a spreadsheet, you're a real person with a career, specific goals, and maybe a family.
Exactly.
Let's run through the Calquify lifestyle matrix to see who actually belongs where in 2026.
Let's do it. Let's start with a very common demographic. Imagine a 35-year-old developer making, say, €65,000 a year, relocating with a spouse and 2 young children.
Well, looking at the data, it actually points to the Netherlands as the clear winner for this group, which honestly might seem totally counterintuitive to the listener right now after everything we just said about Spain's massive advantages in take-home pay.
Right. It sounds contradictory.
So why does Amsterdam win the family scenario?
Because at lower salary levels, like €65,000, the mathematical gap between the Dutch effective rate and the Spanish flat rate is actually much smaller. The flat 30% exemption is highly competitive when you aren't hitting the highest progressive tax brackets.
Ah,
But more importantly, the Netherlands offers a superior, highly subsidized infrastructure for families.
can you give me an example of how that infrastructure actually puts money back in their pockets?
Oh, definitely. So Amsterdam has world-class international schools, and the government offers something called kinderbeslag.
Kinder what?
Kinderbeslag. It's a universal child benefit paid out every quarter just for having kids. And on top of that, there's toeslag, which includes significant allowances for childcare costs.
Oh, wow. So you actually see the return on those Social Security payments.
Exactly. The societal return on those high Social Security taxes we discussed earlier really shows up when you have children. The Dutch system financially supports the family unit in a way that offsets the higher initial tax burden.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So families and mid-range earners go to the Netherlands because the social benefits outweigh the tax hit. But what about, say, a 28-year-old remote entrepreneur? Someone running an e-commerce business or freelancing for a bunch of international clients?
Spain takes a decisive victory here, no contest.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
In 2023, Spain passed the latest startups, which officially extended the Beckham law to entrepreneurs, digital nomads, and people managing foreign companies remotely. It was a massive, deliberate move to capture the remote work boom.
Wow. In the Netherlands, do they have a similar setup for freelancers?
Not at all. The Dutch 30% ruling strictly excludes freelancers and self-employed individuals, what they call ZZP. You must be an employee on a standard payroll brought in from abroad specifically for that employment contract to get the Dutch benefit.
So no digital nomads in Amsterdam getting a tax break.
No, there are virtually no exceptions. If
Yeah.
you want to work for yourself, the Dutch tax break is entirely closed to you.
Okay, very clear distinction there. Let's look at the other extreme of the income spectrum then. The ultra-high earners, the executives, the specialized tech leads making over €250,000.
Right, the top tier.
Spain seems to win this demographic easily, and it comes down to a relatively new Dutch policy called the WNT cap, which I've also heard called the Balkan norm. So for 2026, the Dutch actually capped the 30% ruling benefit at a salary of €262,000.
That is a critical constraint for high earners to understand. Because if you earn €400,000 in the Netherlands, the 30% exemption completely stops at 262,000. Every single euro you earn above that cap gets zero exemption and faces the full 49.5% progressive tax rate.
Whereas Spain, on the other hand, lets you keep that flat 24% rate all the way up to an astonishing €600,000 limit. I mean, I have to push back on the Dutch strategy here. It sounds like a sports salary cap that actively punishes your star players. Does the Dutch system essentially penalize you for being too successful?
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Because if the whole point of an expat tax regime is to attract the absolute best and brightest global talent, why put a hard cap on the exact top-tier talent you're trying to attract?
It is a fascinating study in contrasting political philosophies, honestly. The Dutch WNT cap is fundamentally a societal equity measure. It's actually legally tied to the maximum salary allowed for public sector workers in the Netherlands, including the Prime Minister.
Wait, really? The Prime Minister's salary?
Yeah. The political consensus there is that it is fundamentally unfair for a foreign executive to receive massive tax exemptions on a €500,000 salary while domestic workers are paying the top rate. They are deliberately prioritizing social cohesion and equality over unbounded talent attraction.
And Spain just doesn't care about that parity.
Spain is taking a much more aggressive, unconstrained approach. Their €600,000 ceiling is a clear, unabashed signal. They want the heavy hitters. They are perfectly willing to offer a massive tax disparity between locals and expats to stimulate their top-end economy.
Wow, that is a stark difference in national priorities. Now, before we wrap up the lifestyle matrix, we have to talk about the application deadlines because, honestly, they are terrifyingly strict in both countries.
Oh, yes. You do not want to mess these up.
If you choose Spain, you have 6 months from your first day of employment to apply for the Beckham law. In the Netherlands, it is even tighter. You have just 4 months from your first working day.
And missing those deadlines is absolutely fatal. If you file on month 5 in the Netherlands or month 7 in Spain, you lose the regime forever.
Forever. You can't appeal it.
You cannot appeal it. It is one of the most common and frankly most expensive mistakes expats make.
But why are they so unforgiving? I mean, why can't you just say, hey, oops, I forgot, can we just backdate this to January?
Well, these are just arbitrary dates, right? These applications require immense, complex coordination between your employer, the corporate payroll department, and the national tax authorities.
Oh, right, because payroll's already running.
Exactly. If you miss the window, you are legally registered under standard local taxation. The bureaucratic systems in both countries simply do not allow retroactive unspooling of your tax residency once you're fully embedded in the standard system.
Wow. Okay, consider yourself warned. So we've broken down the engine, we've looked at the hidden shipping fees, and we've walked through the lifestyle matrix. Let's summarize the final verdict for you.
Let's do it.
If you are an earner making over 80,000 euros, if you are a remote entrepreneur, or if you're moving with significant global assets and investments, Spain's Beckham Law is the undisputed financial heavyweight champion for 2026. You get a lower flat rate, drastically lower Social Security deductions, and vital protection for your foreign wealth.
Absolutely. However, the Netherlands remains the better choice if you are earning under 80,000 euros, if you are bringing a family and need robust, subsidized social infrastructure, or, and this is key, if you are planning a long-term stay of over a decade.
Oh, right, because the regimes eventually expire.
Exactly. Once these 5-year regimes expire, the standard tax rates in both countries are actually quite similar, up to 49.5% in the Netherlands versus 47% in Spain. But the Dutch corporate and legal infrastructure is often considered stronger for building a long-term pan-European career after the tax break ends.
That makes a lot of sense for the long game. But before you go out and sign a lease in Amsterdam, we want to leave you with one final kind of provocative thought, because there is a new piece of structural uncertainty looming over the Dutch tax system right now.
Yes, the 150-kilometer rule.
Right, so the 30% ruling requires expats to prove they lived more than 150 kilometers from the Dutch border for 16 of the 24 months before they moved. This effectively excludes residents of neighboring countries like Belgium, Germany, and northern France from getting the tax break at all.
And what's fascinating about this 150-kilometer condition is that it is currently facing a massive legal challenge at the Court of Justice of the European Union.
The CJEU.
Yes. The argument is that it violates the fundamental EU principle of free movement of workers by discriminating based on geographic origin.
So what happens if the European courts strike that rule down and say the Netherlands has to offer the tax break to all those neighboring countries?
Well, if that happens, the Dutch government would face an absolute explosion in the financial cost of the program because thousands of cross-border workers would suddenly be eligible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So to limit that financial exposure, they might be forced to restrict the entire 30% scheme even further for everyone, completely regardless of where they come from. It adds a major layer of long-term political instability to the Dutch offering.
That is wild. So
Yeah.
while Spain's Beckham law looks incredibly stable right now, the Dutch 30% ruling remains a moving target that could change entirely based on a single court ruling.
Which is exactly why, regardless of how the math looks in our deep dive today, your absolute next step should be consulting a registered tax advisor and a Caesar fiscal in Spain or a belasting advisor in the Netherlands before you pack your bags.
For sure. Don't just look at the shiny sticker price on the car. Take it to a mechanic, have them put it on the lift, and make sure you know exactly what kind of engine you are buying into, because a little bit of due diligence today could save you tens of thousands of euros tomorrow.